So there's this video that just completely blew up online, making some really explosive claims about two sitting U.S. congresswomen. But what's actually going on in it? Well, today, we're going to break it all down. We're going to deconstruct the arguments and the accusations from that exact video, using its own content to see how the whole narrative gets built.
Look, this video is designed from the ground up to be provocative. And just to be clear, our goal here isn't to fact-check it, it's to understand it. We're basically breaking down the anatomy of a viral political commentary to see exactly how it works.
Okay, so the video kicks things off by going after Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, specifically her reaction to a primary election loss. And the narrator's entire argument, the whole thing, really hinges on what they present as this massive hypocrisy.
The source video plays this exact clip of Crockett talking to her supporters. And her direct accusation of cheating, that becomes the foundational piece of evidence for the narrator's entire argument. He really wants you, the viewer, to hear that word, cheating, straight from her mouth.
So for the narrator, the key here isn't just the claim of cheating. It's who is making it. He immediately frames this as a huge contradiction based on what he claims was the Democratic Party's stance on the 2020 presidential election.
And here's exactly how he illustrates that point. On one side, he presents the Democratic position on the 2020 election as totally absolute. On the other side, Crockett's position on her own election. For the video's creator, putting these two side by side is the ultimate gotcha moment.
And there it is, right in his own words. The narrator uses this perceived double standard to try and discredit not just Crockett, but to make a much bigger statement about her entire party. This right here is the heart of his critique in the first half of the video.
But the narrator doesn't just stop at hypocrisy. Nope. He offers his own theory for why Crockett lost, arguing that her blame is totally misplaced since, her opponent was also a Democrat. And then the argument takes a turn and becomes a personal attack on her character, and he finishes by claiming her political identity is one-dimensional, focused only on what he calls race baiting.
All right, so after Crockett, the video pivots over to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, and this is where the accusations escalate dramatically. We're not just talking about hypocrisy anymore. The narrator is now throwing around the word treason.
To frame this whole new section, the narrator plays a clip of a statement from Donald Trump. This quote immediately sets a really aggressive tone, and it introduces the theme of deportation, which ends up being the climax of this whole segment.
And then the narrator just unloads this series of really severe charges against Omar, and he presents them like they're established facts. First, there's the accusation of leaking military plans to Iran, which he flat out calls treason. Then he goes after her finances. And finally, he accuses her of being a liar, using a specific video clip as his proof.
And to prove that point about her being dishonest, the narrator sets up this scene that honestly feels like a courtroom drama. He shows a confrontation between her and a reporter, and the whole vibe is that the truth is about to come out.
So first, you see the accusation from the reporter, and it's followed immediately by Omar's flat denial. I never said that. This creates this moment of direct conflict. And for anyone watching the commentary, the question is obvious. Who's telling the truth here? And bam, right after her denial, the source video plays an old clip where she seems to say exactly what the reporter just claimed she said. For the narrator, this is his smoking gun. He wraps it up by just calling her a liar, completely convinced that the video evidence is irrefutable.
And all of this leads to the final and definitely the most severe part of the argument against Omar. The narrator starts suggesting that all this talk about removing her from the country, it's becoming more than just talk.
The video uses this clip from Congresswoman Nancy Mace to really add weight to the threat. By featuring another elected official saying this, the narrator is implying that this isn't just rhetoric from commentators anymore, that it's a serious political possibility.
And that's his final analysis of the situation. He tells his audience that the whole movement to deport Omar is gaining real traction, that it's heating up and starting to grow some legs. He presents this like it's an imminent political development.
So, after laying out this whole case against Crockett and then against Omar, the narrator pulls the camera back to offer one last, sweeping judgment. He uses these two individual stories to paint a much bigger picture of an entire political party.
And there it is, his ultimate conclusion. For him, these events aren't just isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a much larger decay, and they prove his central thesis, that the Democratic Party is fundamentally broken and just in shambles.
So what do we take away from all this? I mean, this video is just one example, but it really does raise a much bigger question. When this kind of viral commentary becomes the story itself, what happens to the actual facts? What gets amplified? And maybe more importantly, what gets lost in all the noise?